All right, we are now good to start. Thank you everyone for joining us today for this live streaming of the webinar. A very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our honorable participants from 3 continents and 3 different time zones. We are really grateful to you for joining us here today. My name is Shavana Khalil. I'm Associate Professor in Fashion Design Department at Pakistan Institute of Fashion and Design, and I'm currently a PhD scholar at University Joao di Venezia in Italy. It is an honor and a privilege to welcome our esteemed guest speakers and panelists to this conversation, which is a B International event organized by the Center for Internationalization at PIFT. Building Internationalization is a project co-funded by European Union under Erasmus Mundus program. Before we begin, I would just like to add that today's event aims to discuss the importance of international education as a catalyst for future academic growth, global connectivity, intercultural harmony, and knowledge economy for the future. So we begin by introducing our 5 esteemed panelists from academia who are working in the industry as well. So first of all, I would like to introduce Ms. Nicola Gavarini, who is the Director General of Milano Fashion Institute. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Perfectly. Thank you so much, and thank you for the invite.
Thank you. Mr. Nicola is a specialist in the areas of corporate strategy, entrepreneurship, business planning, and management of fashion companies, and is also currently involved in the above degree courses in Italy and abroad. Mr. Nicola is also co-director of the Fashion Law Executive course at Milano Fashion Institute and strategic consultant for law firms for Italian and international companies in fashion, luxury, and lifestyle sectors with particular attention to startup projects. He's currently involved in international cooperation projects for government agency and government education institutions as well. In 2017, he received the Merit Medal for Development of Italian Latin American Cooperation Program by IILA, Intergovernment Organization, Italian Republic, for being active in the field of cultural, scientific, and developmental cooperations. Apart from this, he has his to credit many publications as well. So a very, very warm welcome, Mr. Nicola.
Thank you very much.
We also have the pleasure of having with us today Dr. Fayaz Hussain, who is a leading specialist in the areas of creative technologies and applications. Dr. Fayaz is an Associate Dean in Partnership at Cardiff Metropolitan University and holds the status of Senior Fellow of UK Higher Education Academy for his considerable contributions to research, teaching, as well as management. Dr. Fayaz has designed numerous courses, managed a number of curriculum-related projects, and championed employability. Dr. Fayaz also has a number of publications, and he has a vast experience of realizing and managing international collaborative partnerships, tailoring marketing for international student recruitment, and also has worked with different international companies in UK, Germany, and Dubai. He has a successful international research record and has worked for leading companies and high-profile international institutions. In Pakistan, he has played a significant role in introducing internationalization in higher education institutions while working with British Council and Higher Education Commission of Pakistan. His specialist subjects areas include multimedia design and application, computer animation, mobile application and technologies, to just name a few. And his experience is immense, and we always have a pleasure to have him at PIFT always. Thank you, Mr. Fayaz.
Well, thank you for the honor of being here. Thank you.
Today, we also have the honor of having with us Ms. Jenny Balko from University of Boras. Ms. Balko has a PhD in international marketing with a focus on intercultural communication when sourcing from China. She's a senior lecturer in textile management at the Swedish School of Textiles. She has also served as Vice Dean for International Affairs at the Faculty of Textiles, Economy, and Engineering between 2013 to 17, and today is responsible for one of the most popular programs for international students at her university. Ms. Jenny, international experience includes Chinese language also, which is very interesting. She has studied it in Beijing and throughout her academic career. She has been responsible for multiple international collaborations, including a double degree program in international marketing and IT. Her research interests, primarily from a cultural point of view, include consumer perspectives on data-driven analysis, digital retailing, online impulse buying, and it has a lot of publications. Just recently, to name, mobile shopping from home. It is very interesting. I've gone through it, which she just published in 2021. Thank you for joining us, Jenny. Great to have you here.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Okay. Today we also have with us our very own Amar Bilal, who is an assistant professor in Fashion Design and Society program at Parsons, the New School. Mr. Amar is also faculty at the Columbia University Sustainable Management Program, where he has introduced new course called Sustainable Fashion and Startup Strategy in 2020. Mr. Amar is multifaceted after completing his BBA from Clark's University and launching his bespoke denim label, as well as a very successful menswear luxury label in Pakistan. He went on to do his MFA fashion from Parsons. His graduate collection earned him a place as a key faculty member with Parsons Design Community, where he is serving now. Mr. Amar Bilal is also the founding member and partner in 1432, a revolutionary equal share fashion brand that pledges 50% of its net profit from each transaction back to its artisans and sponsoring a child's education in Pakistan, which is a very commendable effort on his part. The 1432 business model has been highlighted by Vogue Business as well. And in 2021, he also won the Stern's Entrepreneurship Challenge. Mr. Amar Bilal has also been instrumental in fostering relationship between Pakistan Institute of Fashion and Design and Parsons School in New York. He has been instrumental and coordinated student-faculty design workshops by bringing faculty from Parsons to Pakistan, and thus bridging the gap and initiating a dialogue between the two institutions, for which we are very grateful to him. Thank you, Amar, for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you. And then we have Ms. Sanya Hunnawat. I hope I pronounced you right, Saina?
Yep.
Saina is a lecturer in fashion design at the Department of Design in Swedish School of Textiles. She has worked as Director of Studies in Department of Design and also has her own label by her own name as well. Ms. Saina is MFA Fashion Design graduate from Swedish School of Textiles. Her work has been exhibited in Stockholm Fashion Week, London Fashion Week, as well as Shanghai Fashion Week. And I was lucky to go over some of her work, and it was really, really very interesting. Ms. Sanya has also been working with different Swedish fashion companies. She has also been working as a freelance costume designer. Her area of interest are exploring collaborations of different disciplines, meeting of multiple creative minds coming together to explore new methods for design and designing for today. Currently, she is involved in a research project exploring the relationship between fashion and games. Welcome, Saina, to the event. Now, I would welcome all of you to today's webinar. So we start with the conversation with my first question to all of you. To what extent do you agree with the statement that international education is a catalyst for leading change around the world today? And why is it needed so immensely? I would like to start with Mr. Nicola, if you would share your views on the question.
Definitely, I do totally agree, because through international education, students that will be probably the next leaders generation, independently from their field of activity, they meet diversity. For some of them, it's the very first time in their life they're doing that. Diversity in terms not just of cultures, but also in terms of understanding, and this is the most important thing from my point of view, understanding that maybe our, let's say, country model, the way we think, our mindset is just one-off. When students will have to enter inside any company, nowadays any company is addressing basically the world. We don't have national markets, we have a global customer, we have even global trends. So that's the reason why when students are getting an international education, basically this can be really a boost in terms of putting together new soft skills as well as knowledge. So that's definitely the starting point for leading change all over around the world.
Yes, you're very right. So we have to really rethink and redevelop international education so that it could really help us in the future. I would like to also invite Mr. Fayaz Hussain to share his views on the subject.
Well, thank you. It's an interesting question because we all want change in life and we all want a better life of some kind. And I think sometimes we feel the grass is greener on the other side, as we say in the UK, I guess, and the other parts of the world. And we all strive to actually go towards that greener grass. And I think internationalization and international education does and has seen, and there are cases, many examples, some in front of us, that actually facilitate and show that actually does change lives. And I think the important bit for me here is the grass is greener wherever you live. And it's important to recognize that our students in the UK benefit from, let's say, being in Pakistan or in China or different parts of the world, as do Pakistani students and other students going around the world. It is important to, I think, for us to recognize the change happens both ways. It's not one-way traffic. Often you're sitting in a country, you think, wow, everything's there, but it's not. I can give you an example. We do, and I think many of our colleagues here would know this, mobility. When you have exchanges, students go abroad, they come back and they use the word, that was life-changing, and we're not talking about 18-year-olds. We probably they're doing masters, or maybe, they're in the final years of their studies. People who have seen, or young people who have seen the world or part of the world already. But I've seen students who have come back and changed their design thinking. They have set up businesses based on what they've seen around the world. So yes, it can be, and in fact, we encourage it. And I think it's not just students, staff benefit from that as well, as we know. And we'll obviously touch on that. But definitely, it is a catalyst. Catalyst is something that sort of starts and finishes. I think it's more sustainable. Yeah. I think it's the route for change.
Yes, thank you so much. It's a continuation, and it's actually working together towards another goal. So thank you for your words. So Jenny, would you like to share your views?
Well, I totally agree with the previous speaker here. I mean, what we see today in work life is not a very homogeneous with the same cultures, same languages. We have multiple languages, we have multiple cultures, but also multiple disciplines. And this is also very challenging. I was asked, have the program that I'm coordinating is a program where we have applicants from all over the world. They have design background, they have engineering background, they have business background. And I was asked by one of my managers, what are you really doing for the local business life? And I say, I offer the students an opportunity to really discuss, not just and interact and work together, because it is not about what you read in the books. It's when you start working, start solving problems, start looking at it from different perspectives. That is also when you learn something, not just about the other culture, but about yourself. And what values did I foster in this situation? And I think that learning about yourself is just as important as learning about other cultures.
I think that is a very important point, because I think discovering our own self is actually what happens when you go abroad. You get into different cultures and you see yourself where you stand and where they are. And then you see it's all combined, and we go towards another sort of discovery, towards our own discovery. Amar, would you like to also contribute your views on the subject? Because you have been in Pakistan, you've been in Geneva also, you studied now in America also. So was it a life-changing experience for you when you went over there?
Yeah, of course, it got me to get divorced and shave half of my head. Of course it was. I mean, it's obvious, right, Shavana? But I want to say something here, and I feel strongly about this. I think we can't talk about international education and the benefits of it unless we speak about the access to it, and that's what I work on. And these days, I see a lot of drive for students, international students at Parsons and many institutions. But the fact of the matter is, at least in America, art education and general secondary education has gotten so expensive, which is problematic. So, it's sometimes frustrating for the university as well as us talking about diversity. We're talking about racial diversity, but we're not talking about economic diversity. So the international student body, unfortunately, in art schools in America has come to represent people who just pay a lot more. So for a very long time, it's an uncomfortable subject where I would prefer more economic diversity in my art classrooms or my design schools than racial diversity at this point, because that's what design schools were, for people to interact and not come from a sense of privilege that they use that education, or they don't have the same stakes. So I think that part is important. And I love what Dr. Fayaz said. I think recognizing that it's not meant to be a one-way traffic. If we're truly looking for experiences like he suggested, then those experiences are not necessarily in places with immense infrastructure, right? The experience is based on a community. And if that is the highest value, then it's not about the most expensive equipment. It's not about the most expensive facilities. It's about the community a school is able to create. And a community is based on economic diversity and cultural diversity. So I think that I just want to exercise caution, where a lot of times this idea of, going to this international education is tricky. And one thing that we can also say, that what COVID also did was it made it even more difficult, right? It made it more difficult, and it also made something very evident. It made folks value, what are they paying for when they go to international organizations? And when people were dialing online, they're like, wait a minute, I think what I paid for by coming to an American university and paying, I don't know, $40,000 which is ridiculous, was the fact that I want to live in New York. And they're like, oh, so actually what I was paying for was just to be able to pay New York rent. How much of it was that actual community? Because if it was about the interactions with the professors and the people, they would have been completely fine sitting in their homes, right? And just leveraging off those 3 or 4 hours or 6 hours in the classroom and how valuable it was. I think we need to talk about what the international experience really is, what it provides, and reevaluate it, and reevaluate the access to it. Somewhere down the line, education has been branding and franchising itself with the lure of international students because it just meant more money. At least in America, I can speak for that. So sorry, but I had a different kind of breakfast this morning, so.
No, you're very right. Anybody would like to add to the conversation? What Amar has just rightly pointed out, that is what we also have the problem in Pakistan when students are applying. There is a lot of problem financially, and one of our students, we are very thankful to Amar. He took her for the MFA fashion program, but she also faced a lot of problems related to economic structures over there. And
she faced problems around race. They weren't
race also.
Let's be honest. They talk about it, right? In a class of 18 people, they're not used to a girl who's from a village of 500 people. It sounds great on paper, but it's difficult to mentor somebody like that. So our systems have to catch up with that nuance,
Yes, Mr. Fayaz, you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just want to follow up, and that's an interesting point Amar made about costs. And it's not that cheap in UK either. But I think what we try to do, I refer to as bridges for people to come across. And so we often think about 3-year, 4-year, or PhD program, 3 to 4 year. But there are other avenues. There's other ways of actually getting the experience. For example, we do International Week this April, for example. Exactly, a series of taster workshops, obviously in our labs and so on, in our workshops, but hands-on, practical. But they're costing less than £200 for the whole week. Yet, if he went for a professional, which would be professional quite clearly, but if he went for something similar, out of that International Week, maybe a few £1,000s for the same experience. So I take Amar's point of view that there needs to be, we need to actually look at the currency, look at what we have in hand, look at the currency, what we are spending for. Sometimes, we can do things other ways. And my role, can I say, and I guess this is the role of many of us here today, is to actually talk to individuals, because every individual has a different circumstances. It's not the case that if you don't have £10,000 or £20,000, there's no point talking. It's not about money. Money obviously matters, it pays the bills for everybody, but there needs to be other ways of actually doing things. For example, you can do a top-up year. You don't have to do 3 years. So that's one year. Master's is only 1 year. In the UK, you can now stay 2 years after you graduate, and work, and so on, and repay any money back. So there are different ways of doing this. And what I'm really saying is there are different bridges that you have to make for students, and everybody will have circumstances. It's just a case of them having access to that, being aware of the opportunities. And I guess all of us sitting here today are those bridges, and we try to actually help students. So
yes,
there were a few points.
Thank you, Dr. Fayaz. Yes, Jenny, you would like to add something?
I think that apart from the monetary issue, where Sweden is obviously not a very cheap country to live in either. But apart from that, I think that Emma has another point that is very interesting. What is the international experience? Can you gain the international experience digitally and without sort of engaging? And looking back at my experience from 1997 in China, the things that really hit me hardest was that visit with one of the other students to their home, or dinner with a family, or the simple things. And I tried to here in Sweden, I offered some of my students, if they wanted to, they could use a house that is an organization house to just bake cinnamon buns, which is a tradition in Sweden. so one of the students offered to help the others. So, but these are the things that are really hard to organize from a university perspective also. How do you create these small experiences that make such a huge difference?
Yeah, that is very important. What do you think, Saina? You have been studying over there also, and you have a different background, cultural background, and then you have been adjusting over there. Please, we would like to share your experience as well.
No, I completely agree with what everyone has said about the importance of internationalization, and I think Amar gave very interesting viewpoints on the challenges, which is the next topic that we may talk about more. But I think that from a personal perspective, as a fashion designer or a fashion design student in Sweden, I remember just on a personal note, just how I wouldn't say difficult, but maybe challenging it was to convince also friends and family that I'm going to pursue this specific area, and that has to do with, I have an Iranian background, which probably is obvious with my last name, but some in some cases or in some cultures, and if I only talk about design education is not seen as a status thing to study, or maybe not as relevant to study, because there are other disciplines that are more prioritized in certain cultures. I don't know if this is primarily from a personal experience. I don't want to say that this is the Iranian way, but I have somehow seen these tendencies from time to time. And I know that in my year when I studied, we weren't that many people who looked like this.
Yes.
And that has been quite interesting in a way, because this is changing more and more, I would say, because we see that, both from the student perspective and from the staff perspective, I think that if design in the end is a service. You are designing for something or for someone. So if you are if you are doing that, you need to be able to understand who that someone is, what is the context, what is that community, which community are you communicating with? And for that matter, I think that internationalization is extremely important. However, it is also challenging because one is, as I sloppily call it, the status symbol of design as a field. And the other one is, like Amar talked about, the economy behind it. I mean, it is extremely expensive to study design, which means that, you know, when you have to make priorities, how do you prioritize if you want to pursue an academic career or higher education at all? I know also, just speaking about it, not from a global perspective, but I remember we were, for some years in a row, I've been visiting a suburb outside of Gothenburg, just to reach out to students or potential students from various cultures. It's a suburb where actually the percentage of Swedish people is very, very low. So there are many, many immigrants living in these suburbs from various cultures. And just, you know, because we're interested to see how, what does this design education mean, or what could that, how do just people in our own sort of locally react to, or what are their interests in studying these subjects? And what is interesting there is that you get a completely different, I mean, if you have like a design assignment that you give to a student from a different culture than a Swedish one, or it doesn't have to be in Iran, or doesn't have to be, it can easily be a suburb in Gothenburg. You get all these varieties of expression that are just so important to be able to develop as a designer. So yeah, I'm ranting a lot now, but there are so many different aspects that one can talk about. And I think that a lot of our speakers here have made some very interesting points, and I can only agree with what they've said.
Yes, thank you for your views. I think the topic which you are right now is another conversation we can have about what design education in different cultures mean. And the design education has to be Eurocentric or not, so we can have another discussion at another time. So my next question related to challenges, which you were saying, is that what are some of the biggest challenges in the areas of international education? And do you think there are ways to overcome these challenges, and how? So Dr. Feaz, if you would start.
Challenges. I think colleagues have highlighted some of them. I think from my experience, it depends who you're talking to, but the basic thing is the unknown. Is the fear of the unknown one of the things? I know it's not the answer that people are expecting, and I can go through and give the details, but it's actually not knowing. You know, when for example, I was asking staff members, and can I just agree with Senna, I think it is, and you know, yes, there is stereotyping, but when I went to Cardiff School of Art and Design about 6 years ago, I walked into the school, which was really, you know, quite one kind of school, but there were, you wouldn't believe it, maybe you would, there were students from Saudi Arabia, female students wearing niqab, you know, the full burqa and so on, and they were doing PhDs, and you know, and so on, and you know, and so on. So I think there is an element of stereotyping sometimes. We feel that they, you know, but yeah, I mean, there is a. But one of the things we're doing, just touching back on that, is widening access, and very, very important that the communities, it's not just the certain type of community, all communities having the opportunity to actually engage with art and design. So we have sort of short courses and so on. But in terms of challenges, it's the fair. So I was giving the example with some of the stuff, you know, when you, for example, one of the things we before COVID, of course, was travel abroad, and we were trying to encourage staff to go abroad and see different cultures, whether it's Pakistan, China, you know, South Korea. We used to work with Samson Art and Design Institute and so on. So that kind of thing, we had a program with a joint program. So when we had that kind of thing, not everybody was up for it. I know that colleagues have said we will fly on the next day, but they weren't up to it. And I sensed there was a sort of not understanding, being comfort in their own zones. That was the one. So one of the challenges as far as staff is concerned is really trying to provide reassurances or safety nets, I call them, in order to actually confidence building measures so that they actually appreciate that. The other challenge, of course, is for international students. And with that, of course, is not knowing different cultures, different languages, and so on. But we break that, by the way, and the way we do it, we have instilled in our programs, which are very, very much interdisciplinary. We have called a module called field module. And it's not just field trips, but there are other things we do, projects to do with research, projects we do with industry and so on. But field trips are part and parcel of what we do. So our students go abroad, or used to Morocco, for example, to India. They were coming to PIFD as well, just before the COVID.
Exactly.
And so on. And that is just to break the ice. And it's very, very important. So the challenge is actually providing opportunities which are not that costly, as Amar said earlier on, but also allow maximum return for the student, exposing them to the experience. So I can go through a list of different challenges. Students come to us. When they come to us, one of the biggest challenges, which we may not face in Pakistan or Indian subcontinent, is language. If they're coming from different parts of the world, then there's that challenge. And it's not knowing just English for us. It's more than just knowing the English. It's being able to express yourself both in visual form and in writing and in verbal form and that kind of thing. So there are different challenges. But I think the biggest challenge for me is the fear of the unknown. People don't, and the other challenge that people often find, especially who are not middle class, or upper class or anything in society, access to information, access to the right people who can give them information.
Right information, yes.
Yeah.
Very rightly said.
I'll stop there. I'm sure my colleagues would want to say other things.
Yes,
well.
yes. Mr. Nicola, what would you like to add to this conversation?
I totally agree with Dr. Fiaz. Basically, there are several challenges that we as educators should face, as well as students, of course. I shared that the experience at Milano Fashion Institute. We will start the next academic calendar exactly the very next week. And we will have here in Milano students coming from 36 different countries from all over the world. Among which, by the way, several students coming from the Pakistan Institute of Fashion and Design, and I would be very, very happy to meet them. What's the main topic there? From one side, of course, nowadays students are very well aware, even if it's their very first experience abroad. But in any case, thanks to technology, now a lot of information can be reached from even the other side of the world. But there is something that they can't reach. And that something is to really experience, first of all, the diversity. So it's not just a matter of being inside maybe a new country, a different country. It's a matter of being in a class of people that are coming from different backgrounds, different countries, and maybe with different even professional, in a certain way, goal. So I think that in the shoes of educators, we should in a certain way have this kind of moral duty of supporting students in their experience that is not just a learning experience, but it's also life in a certain way experience, and permitting them to understand and live really what they call the sense of place. So if they have selected a different country, maybe on the other side of the world, is not just for accessing knowledge, because most of the knowledge nowadays can be get through books independently from our location. So maybe there is something, let's call human capital, let's call social connections, let's call community, as before Professor Amar was saying, that is really doing the difference. And in that, I do think that the main challenge is for universities and educator providers to really understand it and to have an impact through the design of this 360 learning and life experience for them.
No, you are very right. It also depends where you're going for your higher education. For example, I think because I have the experience of UAF in Italy, I went over there for scholarship. So in the last 2 decades, I think it's changed, and European institutions are only public sector universities and institutions do give funding for and scholarships to students who are coming from abroad. And I think there are a lot of students under different programs which have been commissioned by European Union. They are studying over there, and even public sector universities are also contributing to that. And Mr. Fayaz rightly said, even when I went for my research to University of Manchester, I had 3 other colleagues who were from Saudi Arabia. They were all female and they had hijab. So I think within the last few decades, this has changed. The vision of taking fashion and design as an important subject has changed, especially in Pakistan also, and all over the world as well. It has been accepted now. And I think it will take a little bit more time and effort, but I think in Amar, we will get over there, inshallah, hopefully. So now we could go to Jenny. We would like to share your views on the subject as well.
Thank you. I of course agree again with all the previous speakers, but I would like to add something that I see as a challenge also within the academic system, because a lot of times we are, especially in Sweden, we are extremely task-oriented. Information is available in abundance, so you will drown in it. But we are very task-oriented, which means that we everything that is on the course syllabus, that is what they should fulfill, and this is what we focus on. And we often tend to forget all the preparation that Fias was talking about here. How do we prepare our students that are leaving Sweden for another country, and how do we prepare those who are coming in? Like I said, I have large group of students from different parts of the world. How do we prepare them actually? What do we do do we give them time for adjustments when they arrive? And the second part of that is also the reflection part before or when they come back or before they leave, because we tend to think that all of this international knowledge or experience should come by itself without being able to actually discuss and reflect and take it to one step further in. And we rarely have time for that in our busy schedules. The students have so many other things to do and fulfill.
Yes, truly true. Thank you. And Amar, what do you think about the challenges? You have mentioned a few.
I think one of the challenges, Shavana, which is really interesting, which is in Pakistan, as well as I reference Pakistan and America and China, where I have teaching experience, is that if you remember when we came for a workshop with one of my mentors and professors at Parsons, exactly. I witnessed something happening in the classroom in that workshop in 2016 that I witnessed again happening when Zille from PIFD came to Parsons. Twice I witnessed this. And then I witnessed it again happening to me when I teach in China in the summers. And I think that I'm not trying to blame anybody here, but I think that when I was taught design, my professors were English and they went to Central St. Martin's and Royal College of Art. I think that we are having difficulty transitioning to teaching design or speaking about design in the language that Gen Z is used to. And I think first and foremost, I witness this every day, they don't want to be taught. The idea of what a mentor means is different. They want to have a conversation and about everything. And it's difficult. We grew up in a system where we were taught. Here's somebody that is a mentor and respected and experienced. And I think about, why did this happen? How did this happen, right? How were we able to just swallow that this is a position of power, and that is how knowledge was translated to us, right? And I think a lot of younger people, maybe in tech and so on, became very successful at a very early age in saying, I disrupt the system. I don't need this education. I will find my own path. So the amount of younger people who've had a tremendous level of success is by far larger today than it was when I was in university. So what that does is folks want to have a conversation. And coming back to Pakistan, I remember the workshop that we did was with PIFT teachers, right? And at that time, the mistake that I want to acknowledge that we made was that even though we said, listen, we are professors from England and America doing a workshop in Pakistan, we said that this workshop is not by far supposed to be the way, right? The best way. It is a different way. This is how we do it here, but we are wanting to learn from you. But you see, but we can say that, but that doesn't mean that people believe it. You're playing into years and years of colonial teaching, right? So now I've realized that when I walk into the classroom, I have to acknowledge the power that I have and the mindset that I'm working with. When I teach in China and I say, hey, everybody can contribute and challenge the teacher, they're not going to do it. Let's be honest. I can't, by saying that, dismantle that. So similarly, when Zille, who got into the MFA at Parsons and came there for 2 years, it was a wonderful opportunity. And I thought, that's it. The job is done. We raised the money. There's somebody who got there in merit. But the teachers she aimed to please her professionals so much so that it was on the verge of self-abuse, because they would say, hey, you can challenge us anytime you want. But she's not going to challenge them the same way an American student is. She's not. She's working from, right? These things play into the classroom. So I think, even though I, in the previous question, said it's all about access and financial diversity, I think that we have to figure out how folks in the classroom who have the power acknowledge that power, privilege, and then try to actively dismantle it. And sometimes the struggle is that my colleagues everywhere in Pakistan, America, China, they have a hard time acknowledging it. If you don't acknowledge the power that you have and the history of, right, of these cultural relationships that play into the classroom, you're not going to dismantle it. If you just reject it, you're like, no, that's not even a thing. I'm like, no. Let's acknowledge that this is a thing, right? Let's acknowledge that I'm a fair-skinned Pakistani and that made a difference when I got in, right? It doesn't take away from my merit. I'm a man, like it was easier for me. And I came from a family that had sent me to college in America. Let me acknowledge that if I want to help it. If I'm like, no, it takes away from my credentials, it's not going to help. So I think this is one of the difficulties that I am trying to address in myself, and some of my colleagues are addressing, that how do we in different classrooms all over the world acknowledge that power dynamic and how the new generation of students want to be spoken to, right? And not assimilate in a one-dimensional idea of success and culture and so on. So.
Very interesting points you've made. I've noted all of them, Amar, and hopefully if we have another conversation, we have 2 and 3 topics to discuss them. Well, you're very right. We have to admit that, and we have this colonial mindset, which has been, of course, all the subcontinent and different areas which have been under colonial rule. We have these issues, but I think it's high time now, with more integration through social media and other platforms. I think ice is breaking, because I just attended the Digital Multi-Organ Fashion 2020 and 2021, and it was a very interesting conversation. We had people from all over the world related to fashion who were contributing over there, and it's a very interesting talk which is now happening in academia. Related to fashion and design, which I think will make a lot of difference for future, not only related to sustainability, but also related to curriculum, to this new approach, which is less Eurocentric in art and design and fashion education. So hopefully, I think it will change, and we will see more positivity. So Saina, you would like to add to it also?
I mean, just hearing Amar speak brought me back to memories to when I studied myself, and the big difference. I studied like a foundation year in the UK, and just how different the approach was people saw me as Swedish, even though at first glance I didn't look Swedish at all. But I remember that people were treated a little bit differently depending on where they came from. But this was a long time ago. I bet that's maybe not happening to the same extent maybe now, but it just brought me back the things you talked about. So yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We see these challenges too we have an international staff, and also how, in how staff members, how they are trained, what design background they have, and how to articulate or how to explain, or what pedagogy means is so different from depending on where you come from, and also how you basically I've lost the English word, but how you accommodate that, I guess, is also very different depending on which department or which university. And yeah, it's brought me back.
All right. So it takes me to the next question. Do you have any suggestions for students and faculty studying abroad? How can they immerse themselves in new places and cultures? What they should do, and how it will be comfortable for them? Do you have such counselors over there also who guide them once they get into trouble? I think we can start with Mr. Nicola.
Well, definitely, it's a great challenge, because when a student is going abroad and is coming from the other side of the world, basically in some cases they are not expecting what they will meet. So they know maybe a lot about the institution, the university, the school, of course the program, but not about what's the life experience. So my suggestions in that is to leverage, once again, community, starting from professors, because for professors as well, it's a compelling experience to have, to meet, to know people coming from other places of the world. Is teaching as well to us as educator how to meet and to understand cultural diversity and how to accommodate even this cultural diversity. So my very first suggestion is, first of all, get connected with the local community, get connected through, let's say, the guides and the leading role of professors that can put you to live the experience as an insider, and then, of course, to understand the diversity that you're meeting. So trying to read everything, the phenomenon, the social life that you're living there, try to understand even, let's say, before having kind of conclusion, going out of your own mindset. What is very good, I have to say, is that from my experience, nowadays several universities are pushing a lot on the connection between programs, international programs, even, for example, in the case of summer schools, and what is basically around it in the shoes of students. Once upon a time, it wasn't like that. It was like, these are the lectures, this is the program, this is the expected outcome. In reality of things, this is nowadays no more sufficient. We have to consider that we have probably another additional duty nowadays that I permit to say we are almost in the after COVID era. Students weren't exposed to diversity and travel for more or less 2 years. And for their age, these 2 years are fundamental in their development, even as young men and young women. So in that, we have to consider that we in a certain way had to support something that was a little bit freezed in the last period, and definitely should be promoted more in order to, let's say, meet their new expectations.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Fayaz, what do you think? What suggestions do you give to the students and the faculty who are studying abroad, especially even after COVID situation? What are your suggestions?
Yeah, I think we need to understand, I mean, it's a journey for international students. I mean, it's a journey for every student who needs to study, but more so because it's a physical journey as well. And I can only share my experience. I mean, last year we had applications at Cardiff School of Art and Design from 70 different countries. So you're dealing with, you know, multiple different cultures, mindsets, everything. And all applications come to me. So, you know, I get the joy of actually talking to, by the way, not students so much, but parents. At that stage is parents. Parents want a lot of reassurance. You know, from accommodation, from accommodation, from the studies, in terms of, you know, somebody will be there to look after them and so on. I mean, I can share experiences. I don't know if we have time, but experience like this where parents says, I'm actually going to fly with my son or daughter, yeah, to make sure they're settled in Cardiff. You know, they're traveling 4,000 or 5,000 miles. So that conversation starts sort of 6 months earlier. You know, 4 months later, they said, we don't need to come because you're there now. So it's no, I feel there's a understanding, you know, you have to understand where people are coming from. You have to, it's the financial side, it's the cultural side, it's the expectation, you do get a wow factor when you go to another place, whether it's a holiday or otherwise. But what we try to do, what I try to do, like I say, and I'm sure we all do that, is create those bridges. Because not everybody is in a position to afford, you know, art and design should not be for the elite or the middle class, I would say. It should be there for everybody. And what we need to do is create stepping stones. From my end, we do that. With the PhD program, as you know, we do a split PhD program, like many universities, which allows the student to stay in their own country and still come to the UK when they need to and so on. So, you know, and it costs a lot less. Yeah, and that kind of thing. So you can actually start doing things, start helping students in that way. But to be honest with you, the first thing and the other thing I would like to say, and is that for my end, I like to provide that opportunity for students wherever they are in the world to come and talk to me and talk to us. Yeah, my mobile, my email address, everything is on the website right now. And they do. And as we're talking, there are people messaging right now, you know, wanting to know things and so on. So I think for me, accessibility, yeah, being available. And of course, the other thing, I'm sure someone's going to pick this up. We all live in different time zones. Yeah. So, you know, so you can't be 9 to 5 like we are in the West, I think. For me, I'm 24. I say to colleagues, I'm 24/7. They don't understand what that means. You have to be there at the weekends and so on. But can I say, from my end, it's a great joy always, you know, when you see students and parents who have this dream and you are going to be part of realizing their dream. I'm sure my colleagues will agree, you know, when you can actually facilitate that, that's actually a wonderful experience. I'll stop there for other colleagues.
Thank you, Dr. Fayaz. You're very right. They have this dream and they want to realize that dream. And sometimes because they're expecting too much from the dream, the reality check has to be there also. So thank you. And Jenny, what are your suggestions for students and faculty to adjust to new places and cultures?
I can't help laughing. A couple of years ago, one of my Pakistani students came in after being on a field trip in UK. He came in with a present saying, I just want you to have this because you are my mother here in Sweden. and having a Swedish student say that would be non-existent. but I realized how happy I had been to see his journey, because it had been really extraordinary from where he came to where he was when he left as a master's student. But I agree, of course, that being the stability, being that bridge between, also that includes the parents sometimes, and being this point of safety at the Swedish School of Textile for those students coming in is, of course, one of the most. It is one of the things that I find. I'm so happy that I can still be that. But also I find that equally important for students to build that network between students. Because like I said before, these small encounters are really important to understand, not just the studies per se, but also understanding the society in which you are visiting for a for extended period, so to speak. So the student-to-student interactions are also extremely important in this, of course.
Yes, I totally agree with you. I think faculty has a lot of roles to play. Parents, mothers and fathers, but I think not all faculty are meant to be parents also. So we need to understand that as well. So I think that plays a very important role. When you're abroad, you need someone to talk to, you need someone to understand what you're going through. And that is where the importance of a faculty and a teacher and the supervisor comes into practice. And if you are able and you're lucky to have a faculty or a student or teacher who is able to support you, I think that is a big blessing abroad when you're all alone and studying over there, because you face a lot of issues and problems. I think that is very truly said. I think you are a very good teacher and a very good mother as well. So Sanya, would you like?
I have my sons here, so I don't say that too loud.
Okay. Okay, Saina, would you like to add?
I think as a tip is to ask questions, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid to reach out to people. Mm-hmm. We all work in academia. We are here to, even if you're not, finding the right person, you can email someone. Someone will reply to you. It will be forwarded, at least if it's a department. Whereas, if you look at our department, we're quite small, so everyone sort of knows we're a little bit about everything. Everyone takes care of multiple things. So, and I think that as a tip to teachers but also to peers, is to engage in different activities that make sure that a lot of different students can, come along. Maybe it's different now during COVID, but I know that when we've had international students within our programs, that at least before COVID, when we actually had teaching on campus, we had different types of workshops and activities where everyone could get to know one another. And I think that those things are extremely important, because as a person coming from a completely different country into a new world, into a new one, it can be very lonely at times, and I think that that's very it's important to acknowledge that and to sort of help each other out in that aspect.
Yeah, that is right. Yes, Amar.
I think one very specific thing that I think students have difficulty, and that I would like to say if any students are listening in, is something that we practice as design practitioners all our careers, and it becomes harder and harder to do as we get older. And it's the ability to continue working and learning even though you don't like it and you don't get positive affirmation. Mm-hmm. Practicing resilience in a classroom is so important. And especially if international students are coming, I have this conversation all the time. I'm like, oh, this professor doesn't get me, or this course doesn't get me, or the culture doesn't get me. They don't know me. They don't get me. And I'm very empathetic to that. And I'm like, but what you're here to practice, I agree with you, but you're practicing being able to operate and continue even when somebody doesn't get you, and still show up, because that's what you signed up for. And it's hard and it's crappy some days. But how do we do that, right? Because even after education, you're not going to be in situations where you always get to make what you like. And I think inherently, because design or the process of creation comes from such a personal, emotional place, we get used to thinking we are at our best when we like what we do. But that's not always a circumstance in our work environments or school environments. So especially for students who are international, I say to them, okay, you had an assignment, you don't like what you're doing, maybe you're misunderstood, maybe you had a really tough critique. So what do? If you feel that you are misunderstood, you have to work twice as hard. Learn from that difficult situation, do what you have been asked to do, and also do what you did. When I did my MFA, I was berated for the first year and a half. Every day I thought I was going to get thrown out of school. It was really difficult for me. I was really misunderstood. The only way I became a professor was I was like, okay, I'm still going to take on the suggestion. I'm here for the experience. It's a learning experience. I will do what I'm asked to do because I'm here to try new things. I have to practice in my head my ability to be operational and functional even when I don't know, to which is what Dr. Fiaz said in the first thing, right? Even when we don't know, the fear of the unknown, can I still produce and be operational and functional? So I think that is a thing that is really important for international students to kind of conquer, whether they're here for 2 years or 4 years. Can you still produce work when you are in uncharted territory, when you don't know, when it's difficult? Because that is something that we're here for the experience. So I want to say on a positive note that I'll complain about the education system, but it teaches you resilience, and resilience after COVID is one of the most important things we can take forward.
Yes, coming back to COVID, my last question would be, how has COVID changed perspective, international students' plans for studying overseas? And you can share your experiences with the students and at your institutions, how you coped with it, and how has it changed for you and for the students, the way they are taking their studies and going along with higher education. We start with Mr. Nicola.
Yes, that's a very good and let's say deep question. Basically, the COVID has changed in the short term. I have to say it was something, of course, for all of us unexpected, and we had to rearrange almost everything from one day to another. I still remember it was the 23rd of February here in Italy, in Milano of 2020. And we had to move, we were the first school in Italy to do that, to move everything from the physical campus to online. And we had just a 36 hour from Saturday night up to Monday morning to do that. And we did. I had the greatest possible team of my staff, and this was possible thanks to them. It's not just a matter of technology, because it's a matter of, okay, we as professors have to redesign the way we lecture. An online lecture is possible, of course, it can be effective as well, even on fashion design topics, of course, but of course, they should be redesigned around this new tool. In the short run as well, unfortunately, COVID has slowed a lot of international movements, I have to say. It was a kind of shock at the very beginning, but there was a very quick recovery because international mobility has boosted immediately after, I have to say, very few months. So in this, we were seeing here at Milano Fashion Institute steady and strong recovery of international travelers despite restriction. What's the legacy, unfortunately, of this very unfortunate, let's say, tragedy for all the world? Well, there are also, it has acted as an accelerator of change that probably will give us even opportunities. Why? Because it was a boost for the blended didactics. It was a boost for understanding how to manage the unexpected. And nowadays, probably all, I'm sharing a lot of thoughts with that from my point of view with professors from all over the world. And what everyone is saying is that nowadays, everyone is in a certain way more ready for the digital. That is not just a tool, but it's something that can really affect in a positive way, influence didactics. So this is something that definitely will stay with us in the future, and hopefully we will see also some good points in terms of effectiveness as well, and accessibility of the learning experience by students.
Okay, yes, I remember one of my colleague was at Milan Fashion Institute. He was doing his master's, and while COVID hit, and he was very lucky, and it was very good on the part of the university that they kept on working, and he came back after 2 years after completing his master's. So I think it is the responsibility of higher education institutions also how they make a policy for making it easier for students, whether it's online or physical. And we all know that the way situation is even quite right now, we though will be shifting to digital and then physical, and I think we have to live with it, and that is what we need to rethink and readjust to. Thank you. And Dr. Fayaz, what are your points on this topic?
Yeah, I think with COVID, when we start talking about COVID, we can be very negative and so on. But where we are at the moment, we've actually, one of the things that has been recognized for the university, you may have seen that in some of the promotions that we've done, we've become the University of the Year for UK and Ireland. And this is, this is primarily, or one of the main key things is the way we managed COVID and how staff and students were the priority. Students, staff, I would say, were the priorities for the university management. It's interesting how we went and did things there. And I'm not saying we did anything much different than others, but obviously it's been recognized because of it. You can read the comments from the panel, panel who actually gave us that award. So I think the key thing for us, I mean, what's interesting here, you would have thought two things will basically, COVID will hit two things. One is international recruitment, and the other is anything practical. So if you're doing any practical courses, such as art and design, and we are heavily, workshop based, you would have thought it would kill it. But the reality is exactly opposite happened. Last year, we had the highest number of applications the school has ever seen, where students wanted to come to Cardiff. It's not the case they wanted to sit in somewhere sunny, more sunnier, although Cardiff is sunny at times. And we had the highest number, and we had application from most countries as well. Like I said, about 70 different countries, and most of them were outside the EU. So no disrespect to my colleagues in, in Sweden and elsewhere. I'm just saying simply because obviously Brexit was happening and so on. So, there was few bits there. But, the point I'm making here, COVID has actually, we went with a hybrid model like most people did initially. But actually, the focus was always to bring staff and students on campus, or at least give them the opportunity to do so. And at this moment in time, we're expecting all our students would be in Cardiff right now. We're not having everything on campus, but we are having the practical sessions. Like I say, we have, I don't know, there's 10 to 15 different number of workshops, and the students want to be hands-on. Of course, we're following the government guidelines on social distancing, masking, and all that. But it's opening up here in the UK. Are we going totally digital online? I think the answer to that is no at this stage, because that's not what the market wants. Students want to be, I'm saying UK, I'm sure it's true for US and other countries. Students do actually want to be physically here because they come for the out of campus experience as well as on-campus experience, and you can't give both really online. It's very hard, especially art and design. But we are actually looking at the possibility of doing certain things online. But there are many better universities than ourselves in the UK and around the world who have been experts in this online delivery for years. So we'll be in a different market if we went ahead towards that. But from my end, what I'm seeing is students really want to come to the UK, and they want to do art and design in the UK on campus. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fayaz. You're very right. I think the physical experience is totally different from the digital one. And of course, in design and in fashion, I think it is very important to interact, to physically touch and see and feel. But unfortunately, since last 2 years, it has been difficult for all the institutions all over the world. So Jenny, could you also share your experience, and what do you think, how they should plan overseas for during times of COVID?
As for every university, we had to sort of force ourselves to become digital. But even though, and there are many positive and many restraints with being digital, and then there are of course many positive. But I think that one thing that has happened in Sweden, I don't know if it's the same in your home university as well, is that nowadays, before the pandemic, it was sort of assumed that it would be campus studies. It was never questioned, really. Now, I think that we enter a situation where we sort of have to find out, going back to the question that Amar raised in the beginning, what is the international experience? What is the campus experience? What parts of our education must be on campus, should be on campus, is better off being on campus, and what parts is better off digital, or could be digital, should be digital. And in this process of actually thinking through what we are practicing, we are also able to articulate what we are actually offering our students. So I think it's challenging but good that we are going through this process.
Okay, thank you. Amar?
I think I like my colleagues' comments. I think they pretty much covered everything. I haven't taught fashion design for maybe 2 years since COVID. So I got lucky where I was teaching not studio classes, I was teaching more seminar classes. And the one thing I did notice as a positive, based on what Dr. Fiaz was saying, that in a bigger classroom, like more than, I would say, 20, 25 students, in that classroom, I felt that when we were on Zoom, more people participated. It was a very strange thing. And I think that, and I just faced this yesterday at my Columbia class. And I think what happens is that fear in a big classroom, the fear of asking a question that might sound silly, or, because you've got people with diverse sets of experience, that fear goes away when you can put it in the chat and somebody can feel it. And it gives the professor to voice your question in a classroom. I saw more enhanced participation when everybody was online in a seminar course in a big classroom. And what I'm trying to figure out is that now that we're kind of all coming back in person, I don't want to do away with that learning, right? There are definite benefits of being in person, but I think the ability to ask an anonymous question in real time is extremely valuable to create a conversation in a classroom without people feeling uninhibited. And I'm asking my universities, what is the next hybrid? Like, why do we have to go back? How do we take that thing forward? There are problems. There are problems with, like, I've shown up to class and I don't know who's going to be dialing in and who's going to be in person, which is really tricky. So we're still trying to navigate that. But that is one of the things from COVID, which is a positive that I think that we all just did. And I want to take that forward. As far as studio classes are concerned, I struggle. Right. I think me personally, and I am inexperienced here, but I really think it's so invaluable, the tactile nature of being in the studio and doing that. I don't know. I don't know how an MFA education can go on without being in person. I think what some of the programs that Parsons did, Shivana, that I can share with you, they reshuffle their programming to saying, okay, these are some of the seminar stuff that you had to do. Why don't we get done with that in this year? And we'll move the studio classes to when we are back in person. So I like what Dr. Fiaz is saying, that if they can navigate people coming back in person, if it's not a complete shutdown, that you don't walk into a studio for, a whole semester and you charge people money for that. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's not right. But it's a difficult situation, and I hope we can come to the other end of it. But I don't know what it's like over here, but New York, we've been shut down for the first 2 weeks of college because of Omicron. And that got announced maybe a week before people were supposed to, 2 weeks before people were coming back to school. And again, I could see, like, people like, oh man, like I'm paying for this education. I'm not going to enter the studio for 2 weeks. So for studio courses, I think it gets more difficult to navigate that space.
I think for the practical subjects, especially in fashion and design, for example, if you're taking technical subjects, draping, pattern design, studio classes, I think it was really, really difficult during the times of COVID.
Also takes, Shivana, it also takes more time, right? I remember when COVID newly hit, I was teaching a studio course. I just remember at FIT. And the time it takes faculty, So if you and I have to do draping, right, or pattern online, we can do it, but just saying, no, 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 left hand, below, right,
Yes.
no, this way, other right. It takes more time, and energy, right? The same subject matter took me maybe 50% more time to go through online for a studio course compared to in person. Did you face that?
Yes,
Right?
yes. Our faculty over here faced that, and we came up with the marking online, and then they're sending us the assignments, and then we're returning the assignments. We are marking progress, doing progress marking in between through online classes. So it was very difficult, interesting, but you know, there's always a way out. You have to think out of the box. So it makes you, it creates new avenues for you. It challenges you to, I think somebody once said that you got realization through restriction during COVID. So we realized with restrictions that what we need to do ahead and how can we solve. It's a problem solving. We are designers, so we are here to problem solve the situation. I think, and it went with the faculty and the higher institutions very well. They were able to manage it all, I think, all over the world. So Saina, what was your experience, and what do you think about it also?
I mean, the COVID experience has been immense. So I don't think that we have time to go too much into that. Maybe, but I mean, similar to many universities, and as Jenny said, I mean, we rethought so many things. And I mean, Sweden has been famous for having a completely different strategy than other countries. So. Also dealing with that when you have students from all over the world who say that, well, in our country it's like this, but in Sweden you do it like this. Why is it like that? I think that what has been interesting is that it has, and I think this is a positive thing, that COVID has at least challenged me, and I see my colleagues too, in just, you know, how to teach. Sometimes it has been extremely difficult. In the beginning, it was extremely difficult, but I think that now more and more we are learning new efficient ways. We are engaging in different activities that perhaps save time, whereas we find other activities that take more time and generate, Jenny agrees. But what I find extremely interesting with all of this is this new paradigm shift in fashion, which is the digitalization of it. Of course, I find that extremely interesting because I'm now researching it, but it just allows for new types of, you know, exploring other types of competences in design. You know, what is a body after all? What is a garment? What is a material? How do we express ourselves? What is the relation between, you know, our virtual selves and our physical selves? All of those questions are extremely interesting. They've always been there, but it's sort of been boosted through COVID. And I find that extremely interesting to see that we have students that are interested in those topics as well. Maybe, I don't know if this is a quite premature thing to say, but maybe COVID has, well, if it has boosted this digitalization, which I'm thinking that it has, it can open up to so many possibilities for, you know, what is the role of the designer or the fashion designer? How is that person supposed to work, or within which contexts? So I think that, yeah, I would like to agree with Dr. Fiaz that COVID has been quite positive, in even though it has been negative, it has opened up interesting doors too.
All right. The last note all of you would like to add to this conversation, because I think we are a bit short of time. So quickly, Mr. Nicola, what would your views on the subject and the topic, if you'd like to end the note, state your ending note?
Well, I do think that for the near future, my suggestion for students is that wherever you are, or whatever your home school is, try to really get the opportunity of international education. There could be a summer school, there could be a Master of Science, or university master, because it will permit you to get really together experience and to understand differences that will be really a life-changing experience and will be a boost also for your professional awareness. So don't be afraid of that. We have been inside our boundaries, country boundaries, for so much, maybe too much time in the last 2 years. That's the right time for enjoying abroad, starting from your passions.
Thank you so much. Jenny, would you like
Thank you
to
very
add?
much.
Jenny, would you like to add?
Well, to the students, I would say that I mean, you heard Fias said that fear was one of the most pronounced difficulties in challenges for students, and I would say that when as a student in 1997, when I came to China, I hated it. I hated it so much. You have no idea how much I hated it. I didn't know what I was eating. I couldn't talk to anybody, and had I gone home after 1 week, I decided to go into the center of Beijing. I sat down on mid-Tiananmen Square, sulking, and looking around me, I realized people are the same all over the world. You find people that are rushing with families, rushing to work, and people are so much alike everywhere in the world. And I felt sort of a connection sitting there, seeing these people that look so much like a street anywhere in the world. So be brave, go out, realize that you will find good people and safe things anywhere in the world, just as you can find danger at home. So brave it.
Thank you. Very, very rightly put together. Yeah, and Amar, your word?
I think I kind of said it last time. I love what Jenny said. I think be resilient, be open to experience, be open to be operational even when misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
Education is not supposed to be anymore, at least, this, this download of a one-sided information. What you bring to the classroom, just remember that your professors are going to learn from you as much as you're going to learn from them. And it's sometimes that responsibility feels too big for you, but embracing the good and the bad experiences, at the end of the day, you have to be resilient through it. And it's a difficult thing now. Making the choice to invest that money in going for secondary education is a big commitment, and a lot of people have loans to pay for it. And the pressure being like, oh my God, this is going to be this experience for me, and I'm going to come out this way. Let go of that. Whichever way you come out is going to be yours, and it's going to be your truth, and it's your resilience that's going to make something out of it. It's just an experience, good, bad, and everything in between. And you get points for showing up, but you get points for being resilient and showing up and actually making the effort to come back from it and build yourself from it. And sometimes education builds you, but a lot of times education breaks you, and that's okay too. If it breaks you, that's your experience of how you build yourself up. So,
I completely agree 100%. And I would just like to add very briefly, because so many good things have been said, that sometimes the experience and what it meant, it will not hit you the moment you experienced it. It might hit you 10 years after or 15 years after. That is when you know, okay, that's what happened. And just to remember that sometimes the result is not immediate, it comes a little bit afterwards, and to have patience in that, I think is quite important too.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank all of the participants for their inspiring words and sharing their thoughts with us. I think it's been quite a diverse experience and diverse perspectives from all of you, from all three continents, from America, from Europe, and from Asia. I hope that this event will foster better relations between institutions and students. It will be an eye-opener for students as well as the faculty. I would just like to add that in the end that we are a part of a global community now. I think after COVID, we realize this more. So we need to rethink and rework and reobserve and to share our knowledge. Sharing is, I think, very important, and internationalization in education is a part of sharing your knowledge with the students and with the community, with the different cultures. And I think that is the way forward, and we should be heading towards that way. Thank you all of you for your time, and I would in the end like to thank the Center of Internationalization at Pakistan Institute of Fashion Design for organizing this international event. It was a pleasure having you, and it was a pleasure conducting this as well. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.